So, welcome. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm joined as always by the amazing Gary Benoit, speaker, author, uh, retired policeman, and certified financial planner, award-winning financial planner. I'm not sure you're going to speak much about that today, Gary, but let's just acknowledge and celebrate the achievement.
Thank you. Thank
My
you.
name is Maeve Langford. I'm working on this side of the Atlantic here in Cork, Ireland. Gary is based in Alberta. Canada in Edmonton, and we are here and we're doing a deep dive. We are in season two, episode three, and the commencement of what are going to be three episodes on the hero's journey. So that
Yeah.
story that's evident in all cultures, all traditions of basically how the human character grows and develops and really what gives meaning to our lives in terms of stepping into and becoming the hero in our own journey.
Absolutely.
So, Gary, it starts with a call to adventure.
Sure does. The thing is that we're all living a life, right? We're all living a life right now. And it feels pretty, some maybe comfortable, some maybe it's not so comfortable, but it's what we see, right? We're in this place
Sure.
of feeling like it's just life, right? And then all of a sudden, maybe not all of a sudden, maybe subtly over time, things you start to feel uncomfortable. You feel like there's more, or you're not quite satisfied where you are, or something's tapping you on the shoulder. For me, I look back and it wasn't so much a tap on the shoulder as it was a punch in the gut for me.
Yeah.
Right. For me, like really, like I was living a life, I was in a place where things were unraveling very, very fast for me. I had a period of 2 years where things were such downward spiral, that it came to a point where my wife and I had a conversation and she was done. And she was gonna live her life and she was gonna continue to try to do better, but I had to make a decision. She says, I'm going here and you decide. You can either come with or you don't. And if you don't, well, this is where we're gonna end up in divorce and ruin and finding a way to separate our current possessions. Or if you come with, you have to make some big, big changes. Right. So for me, it was that punch in the gut. I had to sit there and I was sitting at this crossroad. It was really this call. The call to action was really, or call to adventure was just this idea of like saving something I cared about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it may not be like that for you, but it was like that's where I was.
Yeah. So I would say for me, it was a little bit more like a kind of, I guess it built up over time, but there was just that kind of waking up one morning and just thinking, like, is this it? Like, seriously? Is this what life is all about? And just feeling like, I was on this treadmill of, and like it's I feel bad almost saying it on one level because I had a good life, right? We three beautiful boys, and my husband and I were happy in our marriage. We had two careers, and yet there was a kind of like, this is it,
Hmm.
and the thought of it just being that for the next 40 years was just it wasn't a pleasant feeling. It was like a
Hmm.
scary feeling that if this is the end of the line, like there has to be more. Maybe that's
Hmm.
a better way to put it. There
Hmm.
has to be more. And that wasn't to say that, the good stuff, I wanted to bring the good stuff with me, but
Right.
it wasn't going to be enough if this
Right.
was it.
Hmm.
And I think when we talk about the hero's journey and the call to adventure, sometimes it really is like a sucker punch, isn't
Hmm.
it? And it's
Hmm.
like, wake up, or,
Correct.
you're on your own.
Hmm.
But sometimes it's just this slow dawning of
Hmm.
like, I just can't live my life like this
Right.
anymore.
Right. And and the
Yeah.
thing is that lots of times when you're in that place, you said something that was pretty important to highlight, I think, because some of our listeners may be sitting there doing the same thing. Well, I'm just really grateful to have the life I have. Right. I'm just happy to be where I'm at. Like I'm glad I'm not anywhere, I'm saying that they have that comparison of like, well, I'm doing so much better than others, so why should I want more?
Yeah. Yeah, and of course,
right?
like we're just coming off a vision workshop here in Ireland, and we great weekend in Cork, best workshop ever,
Amazing.
co-created, of course, but it
Awesome.
was a great experience, and we were talking about this, like the longings and the discontents, right?
Hmm.
So it's not always, again, trying to say that for you listening today, it doesn't mean that things are unraveling, but even when things are good, there's this kind of call to more, right? The
Right.
universe, like from the Big Bang, like it's expanding, 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 and we're supposed to be expanding too, right?
Correct.
So if we're not doing that, and this is what I was saying at the workshop, is like if we're not growing and expanding, we're not sitting still either, right?
Right.
Because there is no stasis in nature. We know this. So we're either growing or we're decaying. And sometimes that decaying it happens very slowly over
Very sure.
time, but it shows up.
Hmm.
It's gonna unlived life shows up in
Hmm.
our relationships, in our health, in our work, in our finances, maybe. It's gonna express someplace.
Hmm.
And I guess that's how the hero's journey works,
That's
right?
how
You
it
go
begins, right?
one way or another. There's a
Right.
knock saying, "Grow. Time
Grow.
to do
Yeah.
something different here."
Like life is always going to try to seek expression through us, regardless of where we're at in life, right? And
Yes.
the desire for a little more, desire to have something different is not it's not a bad feeling actually. It's actually a really good it's a good thing because now you can get curious about it. And something that I think is important as well that I really realized in the last little while is that we'll never really arrive. Like we're going to talk about the hero's journey and it's going to be a circular kind of arrival
Yeah.
when we're all finished. However,
Yeah.
it's we're never really finished. We're always like truthfully like I always the journey is the most important piece,
Yeah. I know,
right?
which is, yeah, it sounds a bit like a
A bit of
cliche,
a
isn't it?
cliche,
But
right?
but
But it
it's
really
true.
is. Like you're going to become someone amazing in this journey. And as long as you allow yourself to grow and expand and learn, and it doesn't got to be a sprint, it can be over time, right? You
Exactly.
know,
And sometimes, we think about the hero's journey and it can be mapped around in a circle, but I like to think of it more like a spiral, that and when we
mm,
come around, we're not in the same place that we left, right? Or I mean physically, geographically, it might be the same place, but
hmm,
we're not the same person
correct.
within it,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And that growth and yes, there will be a call to the next
To the
level.
next level. Yeah, that's really cool. You know, the thing is too, when I look back and I'm reflecting on where I was in that moment, the decision I had to make, um, there may be some resistance, right, in that moment. And for me, I mean, I wasn't really resistant to it because I was like in such a place in that moment where if I wanted one thing or the other, like it was really at that, I had no more rope to go. Like there was nothing left. You know, I wasn't even hanging on by barely a thread, essentially. And so, because of all of that stuff, it's one of those things where we are always trying to, I don't know what the word is, I guess. We're trying to just figure it out in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're always trying to figure it out
And
on
I'm
one
like,
level.
okay, well, I know if I do that, I know that I don't know what it means to do this. I had no idea. Like it was a lot of fear there, right? It's like it's a road that I had no idea what I was starting on when I started it. But the resistance wasn't there. It was just more of the idea that there's fear there, right? For me, the resistance was the fear, was the idea that I didn't know what I was going to do, didn't know how to repair what I had already had damaged,
Mm, mm,
right?
yeah.
But so for some of us, because if it's a slower burn, right? If you're still you're pretty happy in what you have, but you're feeling a little bit of discontent or a bit of a longing, it'd be easier to say to resist that. It'd be easier to
Yeah,
right? What you know what I'm saying? Like, it'd be way easier to
absolutely.
just
That was
say,
me,
right?
Gary,
To like,
100%.
right?
Yeah. So again, when you're listening here today, this idea of the hero's journey, I should probably have said at the outset, it's from the work of Joseph Campbell, and he says like we can see the pattern of this story in human societies all around the world. It's replicated in the stories that we tell, and it's kind of become a template, hasn't it, for
For
writing
sure.
movies and great fiction. But yeah, so there's this call to adventure, whether it's like the sucker punch, so that could be, death, diagnosis,
Right on.
divorce, all of those things that just bring us up short. For me, it was more like an accumulation over time where there was an awareness of a dissatisfaction, but the resistance in me was to like I just kept trying to make it work, right? So the
Mm,
resist instead of just acknowledging this isn't working, there has to be a better way. It was kind of like, okay, what could I do to make it work? So I mean, I tried everything from a makeover in terms of hair and clothing and all of that to, at work, I increased my hours, I decreased my hours, I took on new projects, I got trained in new and interesting and expansive ways, skill development, professional development. I went for counseling. I would say like over a period of 5 to 7 years, I kept trying to fix it.
mm,
And of course, people were looking at me, and again, I was challenging people at the workshop over the weekend. People are looking at you and they're saying, you should be happy. You looks like a good life.
hmm.
I talked about a colleague of mine used to say my big challenge in some respects was in the workplace. And my colleague used to say, Maeve, there's people queuing at the gates for our jobs, like, and
Yeah.
they would have. If you advertised that job, you'd have had my job, you'd have had hundreds of applicants for it.
Hmm.
But I just wasn't happy anymore.
Hmm.
And for a long time, I just tried to make it work. And,
Hmm.
and the people looking on and my colleague and others saying, why would you not be happy? There was nothing wrong in any of them having that perspective or saying that, except that it does make us question ourselves
For
a
sure.
bit, I suppose. So again, when you're listening to this today, really inviting you, like when you know in your heart and soul this just isn't working, and that there has to be a better way. Know that there is, like it really does exist, even if
Right.
you don't know what it is yet. But yeah, you are being called to
Right.
something
Yeah.
better.
And I look at my career too. Like I was a police officer at that time. I had 10 years of service. Oh, I had 12, almost 12 years of service at that time. Um, and I had a good job. It was secure. And I wasn't going to quit my job. It wasn't about my job. Like I just wanted to make my home life better. I wanted to make my family life uh, better. On the outside looking in, you may not have seen the trials and tribulations that we were going through either, right? Like
Sure,
we didn't.
yeah,
It wasn't like we advertised it, and it wasn't like we were, we didn't look unhappy. We just weren't fulfilled.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and we were just weren't fulfilled. We weren't fulfilling each other. The five love language book was really the first step for me to move forward. But you talk about the love cup and you talk about filling that cup up with of the partner that you're with. Well, we were both empty
yeah,
in that
yeah,
relationship, right? And so that was part of the reason why, there's lots of reasons why I got to where I was. Don't get me wrong, and I take responsibility for many, many, many of those reasons. I mean, there was too much time with the boys, right? I was out hanging out, drinking all the time, partying all the time, but just too much time like that. Not enough focus at home. Not being present at home. I had an undiagnosed occupational stress injury, right? I didn't know how to even navigate that piece of it after all the cumulative stress that I had experienced at work. And so it was a bit of a journey. So you talk about a 7 year journey for you. I was in 2010, I guess, 2011, 2010, I would have started. So I would have had yeah, like 11 years of service and, or 12. And in 2010 to 2015, like it was 5 or 6 years or 16 even before things really started to really turn around, like
yeah,
it just took that long. Um, because it was really small baby steps. Like it was little things at a time, right? Through those 5 years, because I had so much to work through.
Yeah.
And, and that was even before, you get to meet the mentor, like you get to meet the influencer, right? Like this is just me trying to figure it out, right? And this is the steps I was
Yeah.
taking. And it was such a journey and it was slow and it was painful. I made a ton of mistakes. Like I did not do it perfectly. I talk about it in a very linear way,
Mm.
but it wasn't linear. There were roadblocks, there were stumbles, that was not perfect, not even close, right? I wasn't,
Yeah.
I'm saying there's nothing. And so that's something to understand too, you guys, when you're listening here and you're looking at this, it could happen very quickly for you. You could start some stuff and, you're in a good place. And in a short period of time, you start really changing your life and really leaning into this journey of development and growth and then you can accelerate it. For me
Hmm.
though, but it could be like me, maybe you are in that place of despair, in that place of, because I got to be honest, if I would have been introduced to the coaches that I was introduced to after those 5 years of me just trying to figure some stuff out, right? If I was introduced to them early on, I would have been that refusal. I would have refused that in that moment for sure,
Yeah.
right? Because I wasn't ready.
Yeah. And so there's different ways in which we can resist and refuse the call. Some of it is just like I often talk about when we're in that state of discontent, we think we just have to suck it up, right? I
Yes,
mean, would you recognize that? Like
absolutely.
yeah, again, at the weekend saying to people, like, we are not sent into this lifetime to build a tolerance muscle. It's not what it's about. And yet everybody around you, like that would have been my kind of received message was like, just suck it up. Like,
Hmm.
you've got X amount of it is good. And again, we might all put different numbers on that. But like it's like you said, it didn't look bad from the outside. So people would be like, what's your problem, Gary? Like
Yeah,
it should be fine. But within you, this isn't okay.
right.
Or, the person you're sharing your life with is saying, not this way. This is not
Hmm.
working for me. So really, for all of us to kind of say, well, sucking it up is never the answer.
Right.
Excuse me, sorry, I'm full of cold.
Real good. You're right. I mean, the idea to suck things up, like, well, hell, I grew up in a timeline of through policing, especially when you look at police officers or military or firefighters or any kind of those kind of like type A male dominated jobs, right? Um, no one ever talked about their feelings. No one had a feeling. You couldn't have feelings. That's not something you do, right? Uh, and if you did have a feeling or you felt something, you never talked about it anyway. Because if you talked about it,
Sure.
then they would look at you like you're crazy. And so you got to sort of got to break down some of those learned behaviors. I think it's a learned behavior, to be honest with you, to like sort of shut
Sure.
out those feelings. And you're trained, you show up on someone's worst day, because that was my entire career, right? 25 years working in a patrol car, working in a uniform, working shifts. I responded to everybody's call for service. So when they were in need, something was happening, they called the police and we would show up. And so we would show up to, whatever you can imagine that you think police would show up to, I can tell you I went to that plus more, right?
Sure.
And so when you're in that, you can't really show that emotion. You sort of got to like
Deal with it, I
put
guess.
those
Yeah.
barriers up so that you can go do your job and not get emotionally attached in that moment, because you don't make very sound, quick decisions procedurally if you're emotional.
Mm.
Simply, right? And so I just think that it's really, really important that when you're going through this, it's okay to have the emotion. It's okay to feel those things. Like that was one of the big things for me, was just sort of unlocking that box of feeling.
Yeah, and
And
like your feelings guide you in
yeah,
terms of where
yeah,
things aren't going right and what might be better for you, for
right.
sure. For sure.
You know,
So like again, sometimes those that call to adventure, it's coming through in the longings and the discontents, right?
Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
sadness or the frustration or the disappointment about some things in our lives or the desire for it to be bigger, better in whatever way that gets expressed in whether it's our health or our finances or our relationships or anything else. But yeah. So the call comes.
Hmm.
There may or may not be resistance.
Hmm.
And then in Campbell's language, one of the things that helps us then is that some role models or mentors show up that
For
kind
sure.
of, I don't know, shine a torch in terms of, look, try it this way, or
Right.
have you thought about, or could you do it this way? And
Yeah.
so how did that work for you? How did that show up in your lives?
Initially it was I did a lot of reading, so I wasn't much of a reader prior, and so
Okay.
like I said, is Gary Chapman, I think, wrote the Five Love Language book. I think is who the author of that is. And so I read that book, and not only did I read it for the regular or the normal one or the purple one, but I did the one for men and the one for kids as well.
Oh, wow.
I read
Okay.
all three. And the reason why I read all three is I wanted to understand it fully. Um, and then I was able to realize how I wasn't showing up properly for my wife because my wife and I are very different love language. So that's the reason why we weren't communicating in that way, right? So that was a part of the communication breakdown for us.
Sure.
And then uh, I was going through so this is the thing is life was still happening. So life was still showing up in my life. Like things were still happening in life. I started this journey. I started to do some reading and exploring, and I was going through the promotion process, and I had gone through it a couple times, and I had been unsuccessful twice in a row. On the third time, I was going through it again, and I was unsuccessful for a third time. And at that moment, I was like, I got to do something. Something's not working. Obviously, maybe it's me, whatever. But I was introduced to a gentleman named Eddie Lemoyne. He's from Nova Scotia. He's an author in Canada, and he wrote a book called "Bring About What You Think About." What he talks about is basically the law of attraction inside that book. So the more you focus on things that you want, the more you attract it into your life. And then you bring about that manifestation of what you're thinking about, essentially, is what that's a real Cole's Notes simplified version of that book, right? That's like in 4 lines. But
Mm-hmm.
essentially, when I read that particular book, it got my attention on my thoughts and how powerful my mind could be. And so I had just been like about 6 months prior. I just got said no. I got denied from the promotion process. Another process was coming up, and I'm like, I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to do it differently this time. I'm going to do it this
Great.
way. And so I went into that with this book, and I had read that book, and I'd done all the exercises that were in the back, and fill out a bunch of stuff in that book. And I went into the process, and I was like, I realized where I was really really good. I had a good role. I was a senior person in the squad. I was doing a lot of mentorship. I was working. I was having fun doing what I was doing. Like I really was enjoying it. The mentorship and the calls are always there and they're always happening, but that whole side of it was getting a lot better. At home was much better because I was focusing on my family and focusing on making it better. And then this process, I'm like, I'm just going to go into it with a different entire thing. Well, lo and behold, I was successful. And that really caught my attention.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like,
Yeah.
huh,
Congrats. Well done.
well, okay. So there's something to this. And then all of a sudden, I'm introduced to a couple of people that do um, something called ULA. So balancing your life. And Dave and Troy are the two guys, Dave Braun and Troy Amdahl. They're both chiropractors in the US. So they're my first real people that opened the door for me. And that mentorship around looking at life in a different way. And I was able, like, I never seen life in 7 key areas. So they break it down into 7 key areas of life. So, fitness, finance, family, field, faith, friends, fun. So I had never seen it in that way. I never thought about life in those areas like that. You know, I'd worked on my work, my field, right? So my career, lots of goals there, or at least I thought I did. Um, I had some financial goals and I had some fitness goals. I wasn't hitting either of those. Um, well, it wasn't until I realized I needed to have faith in my life,
Mm,
like really have faith, like understand what that means, to have good friends that were picking you up, right? And to have some fun. You needed to do some stuff that was fun. I wasn't doing a lot of
yeah.
that. And I had to focus really more on my family. And and it was interesting when I did that, that unlocked the door to another mentor, the current coach that I have now, that I work with all the time.
Mhm.
And it's interesting how those two things happen fast. Like it happened back to back. Like it was like one on top of the other.
Okay.
And that's why I say it, in the beginning, it felt like I was walking through molasses. Like someone poured me or dumped me into this big sea of molasses or syrup or honey or whatever is really thick, viscous material, right? And
And
you
sucks you in.
it sucks you in and it holds you there and you're walking and it feels like you're walking an inch an hour because you just can't pull yourself through it enough.
Yeah.
And then when I guess it came down to belief around the fact that this mindset thing and my mind is more powerful than I realized when the promotion process worked out for me.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was that, you just need one event to, it was a significant event for me in that moment. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, so it was really, that's kind of how it happened. That's kind of like
Yeah.
the struggle to get to where I was very slowly making a lot of mistakes. And then all of a sudden, a couple things happen. You're like, oh,
There's
and
a
then
breakthrough
there's a
kind of, and you
breakthrough.
can
Yeah,
see there's another way.
there's like an aha moment or like whatever you want to call it. I mean, you name it. You
Yeah.
put and you just and all of a sudden I felt like I was freed, like freed up
Yeah.
to accept more. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, like if we look at the kind of steps in the process, it's like there's this call to adventure. And it doesn't always feel like an adventure, right? But it's
Right.
like it can't be
Call
this
for
way
something
anymore.
different.
We can't
Yep.
keep going the way we're going. And then there's maybe refusal or negotiation going on about or trying to just make it work. And then there's the kind of mentors and people show up. And sometimes that's a book, right? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it could be an online course. Or
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was a guy called Derek Rydell. I don't know if you know him in Canada. I think he's based in the States. But and I actually don't even remember what the program was called, but it was about creating more wealth and abundance in your life. And part of my big kind of frustration at that time, I'd done a calculation and I reckoned we were about €400, $600 short a month, right? No matter how we flexed the money, like we were about that much short. And in this online course I did with Derek Rydell at the time, he was talking about, work it out, like where's the gap? What's the shortfall? And then he talked about, well, what would you love to be achieving instead, and putting your energy on abundance and all of the things that we talk about here with everybody on this podcast, but creating a vision for the different outcome. But it was very targeted, very much focused on the money in this particular
Mm-hmm.
instance. But I started to build a vision for €400 a month. And within kind of 6 or 8 weeks, I had been offered a contract that essentially gave me. So I was part-time in my role in the
Mm.
university at the time, and I got an additional contract. It was like 24 days a year or something, but it ultimately gave me about €400 a month
Well, there you
extra.
go.
And I
That's
was
amazing.
like, wow, that, like you said, I paid attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you got the promotion when you approached it differently. And it's like, it's a wake up call kind
Mm-hmm.
of, isn't it? That, wow, there really is another way. And
Mm-hmm.
that for me set me on a journey of understanding law of attraction, how the world works. I often say all my life I've been trying to understand how does it work? Like how do people create results that they love? And it's not just a crapshoot. It's like they actually intend a result and they get it. How do you do that? And that experience for me with Derek Rydell was the start of saying, there is a way to do this. Like you can learn how to create results and outcomes that you would love.
Mm-hmm.
So when we find that, And for me too, ultimately it turned out to work with a coach, and you and I, we've been with the same coach now
Hmm.
for quite some time, both of us. But they kind of talk about, when the student is ready, the teacher appears,
Right.
right?
Right.
And again, sometimes that's an author. Again, A Call for Service is a great book for anybody to learn and appreciate this journey and
Yeah,
the
for sure.
tools and the strategies that supported you on it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, books, audios, podcasts, YouTube, real life coaches,
For
like
sure.
it doesn't it doesn't matter how it shows up.
No.
It's really having an openness to kind of seeing,
Right.
oh my gosh, I'm being helped here, I'm being guided
Right.
here.
And we're coming to the end of this portion of the hero's journey. And uh you know, I just I love the fact that there's so many options out there, guys. Like we hope we can guide you a little bit on this, and that's our goal, is to give you some thoughts to think and ponder and to consider
Yes.
in your own world. Because everybody's going to have their own unique story, which is such a cool thing because we're all unique. And so that's everything that you're going through in your life. Are there ways that you can improve, or is there ways that you can do different things differently? Or are you going to be open to a new way? If it's a podcast, or if it is a book, or if it is a person, or a live coaching program, or an online type course, or a weekend like Maeve just had, like, what I'm
Yeah,
saying, like an immersion
yeah,
weekend like that. Because really, you guys, like, it's really such a unique thing. All of it is. And when you can be open to the possibility, then things will start to present itself, and then you can make a decision if you want to or not.
yeah,
And then really, the recap of the day, and Wade did a great job. You talked about how you went through those steps. Like, you're going to be called to do something different, or there's a feeling you want to grow, whatever that looks like. Lean into that. Be curious about it,
yeah,
because eventually you're going to come, and there's going to be a mentor is going to show up, and it's going to be something that's going to be pretty cool. So,
yeah.
any
So
final
I
words?
would love to just give all of you today listening a couple of questions to maybe get into inquiry. So the first would be like, where am I being called to grow at the moment?
Nice.
What's going on in my life? And again, they might be longings or discontents, or it might be like you've had a wake up call, and really encouraging you to listen to the wake up call, right? So where am I being called to grow or called to adventure? And then, where or how might I be resisting that
Mm-hmm.
call at the
Mm-hmm.
moment? Like, where am I kind of saying, oh, I just need to suck it up? Or the other thing I think we could say is, I'll do it, when the kids are older, or when I have more money, or, when it's convenient in some way. And
Mm-hmm.
again, let us be the ones to tell you it's never going to be convenient,
Mm-hmm.
right? You
Mm-hmm.
just, that call is there, and it's not waiting for convenience. And then the third would be just, who who could be a mentor for me at the moment. And for sure, Gary and I would love to be part of that for you, whether it's
Absolutely.
strictly with the podcast, or if you want to engage with us in deeper ways, we can definitely, talk about that. But just thinking like, where and how can I get support for making the change, right?
Mm-hmm.
For entering into the adventure. And if I could have the kind of support I loved, what would that even look like? And really, I suppose from a lot of what we talk about here, law of attraction in general, like if you would love a mentor, a role model, somebody to support you on your journey, the fastest way to bring that about is to be the best mentor you can be to others in
Mm-hmm.
your life. How can you support others in ways that you would love to be supported? And
Mm-hmm.
that puts you on that frequency, and you will start to draw it in really
Right.
quickly, and kind of shorten that process for yourself.
And build a vision for that mentor. What does that person look like to you?
Yeah,
Right. You build it
yeah,
for that person,
exactly.
right? You can manifest that person. Um, if you knew exactly what it was you're looking for. So just be clear, because the universe listens.
Yeah,
I'm excited to um, continue on this journey with you guys, for the next couple of episodes. Something new for us. We've never tied episodes together before, so this is going to be it's kind of cool for us to do this way.
yeah,
As always, you can connect with us here, through Spotify. There's a few comments coming in. I've been responding to those, which has been pretty cool. You can
Right.
always contact Maeve at Maeve Langford for all of her stuff. I'm going through a bit of a transition. So there's at Gary Benoit. There's
Yay!
yeah, so my Instagram handle is now at Gary M. Benoit. The website's going to be changed to my name. That's in the works. So there's a few things that are happening that are going to be changing. So it's at my name. So that's a little bit easier for people to connect. And so when it's 100% done, I'll let you know. So there's still some frontline resiliency project out there uh, as well. But for the right now, my LinkedIn and my Instagram are just my name. So you can search me
Yay.
up and find me there. So
So there's a new adventure
yeah,
starting on that
yeah,
front
we're gonna.
already.
So we're gonna and eventually there'll be a YouTube channel as well that I'm gonna throw some stuff on as well just to connect with other people in other ways.
Super.
And so that's it's also coming. It's just I've been quite steady the last couple of weeks, so I haven't had time to really get to that yet. So it's coming though. It's coming.
It's coming. So
Yeah,
you heard it here first,
that's
folks.
right. So, anyways, thank you very much, you guys. We will see you on the next episode where we start to talk about the mentorship. We'll talk about kind of the trials and tribulations and kind of the things you go through to grow and what that looks like. And we'll definitely have a whole bunch more to say about that on the next episode, which is going to be really cool. So
See you in a couple of
we'll
weeks.
see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks, guys.